Well, our magical mystery tour has taken us around Liverpool, and we've seen a lot already. We've seen Ringo's childhood home. We saw the pub his mom loved. We saw George's childhood home. We saw John's childhood home. And we saw Strawberry Fields. But of course, the bus has some new surprises for us. So as we go out and look for those clear suburban skies, let's drop the needle. Now, as you can see, on this particular day when we were there were no clear suburban skies over Penny Lane. But it was a trip going down Penny Lane and seeing the sights that Paul had sung about. Actually, Paul wrote the song, but he wrote it in response to a John Lennon song. And he called it Penny Lane because he wanted to be nostalgic about growing up in Liverpool. Before Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band became a full-fledged idea and a reality, John had written a song which was about his childhood growing up in Liverpool. And it was called Strawberry Fields Forever. Paul decides then, well, I'll write a song about my childhood in Liverpool, and it'll also be a nostalgic type of song. And they decided that this new album they were going to make would be all about their memories, childhood memories of growing up in Liverpool. While Paul's song, of course, was Penny Lane. And that album never ever got made. Now, it's often said there's no such thing as coincidences. But just as I was editing this particular episode and talking about that lamented album that never happened, what does Paul McCartney do? But announces he's got a new album coming out, The Boys of Dungeon Lane, which is a childhood album. We're finally going to get memories of Paul McCartney's childhood in Liverpool. Of course, we'll miss John's, but I'm still looking forward to the new Paul McCartney album. But back to the story about Penny Lane. Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane was released as a double A-sided single. It actually was one of the few singles that the Beatles released that never reached number one. And George Martin, their producer, says he thinks it's because the two sides were fighting against each other. Nonetheless, those two songs are among my favorites. So the bus turns around a corner, and guess what? There's the Penny Lane sign. So we all stop, and we get to go out and get our picture taken by the sign that says Penny Lane. Well, I asked Del if he could take us to the Penny Lane sign that Paul McCartney had autographed in that episode of Carpool Karaoke. And he said, well, I could, but you don't really see anything because the fans have pretty much wiped Paul's autograph off of it. And actually, the bus did go past the sign, and Del pointed it out, and yeah, you could not see where Paul had autographed it. It is long since gone. Then the bus took us down Penny Lane, and yeah, we went around the roundabout where the pretty nurse was selling poppies from a tray. Of course, she wasn't there. But now, Del told us a story that I'd never heard before, in that pretty nurse ended up marrying Neil Aspinall, one of the road managers of the Beatles, and Mona Best, who was Pete Best, the original drummer. Mona was his mother. Well, Neil and Mona had a child together, and he's called Rogue Best. And it turns out that he married the woman who is the pretty nurse selling poppies on a tray. It's a great story. Then we passed the barber shop, and as Paul sings, the barber has a photo of every head that he's ever known. And Del said, and that included the Beatles, because they actually got their haircut in that barber shop, at least one time anyway. Obviously, some things in Penny Lane have changed. For example, the barber shop is now relabeled and is still a barber shop. Then it was to go past the bank, where the banker never wears a Mac in the pouring rain. Very strange. And then, unexplicitly, as we're making a turn on Penny Lane, there on the street corner is a statue of John Lennon and a peace symbol. Very strange. Then Del says he's got a secret to tell us. It appears that all those years ago, Paul was pulling the wool over our eyes. You remember the story about the fireman who keeps his fire engine very clean? Well, it turns out that fire station is not on Penny Lane. you have to go around the corner to get to where it was. So a little bit of artistic license on Paul McCartney's part there. But we went by where the fire station was, and I say was because it has now been remodeled into housing. It was a great day to tour around Penny Lane. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now we arrive at Paul's house, and the bus can park. And so we can actually get out of the bus, walk a little bit down the street, and we're standing right at the front garden of Paul's house. Now, when Paul's mother Mary, you might remember Mother Mary, she comes to me. She was a midwife, and she got a promotion. And when she got a promotion, it included moving to this house, which is a much nicer house than they lived in previously. So they moved in there, and Paul was 12 years old. But unfortunately, very shortly thereafter, Mary died of breast cancer. But Paul lived there with his dad, Jim, who was also a professional musician who went by Jim Mack, and with his brother Michael, who became much later known as Michael McGear. And the McCartneys lived in this house until Paul was 20 or 21 years old in 1963 or 64, when the Beatles were exploding and he had to move down to London. And what's so cool about all of the Beatles' homes that we visited is that when you see Paul's house, you get to be the closest to it of all the houses that we've seen. The bushes are right there, and right up beyond it is the sidewalk and the house. Now, as Del told us, earlier in the week on the tour, they actually went by and saw some of the film crews for the Sam Mendes 4 films that he's doing about the Beatles, shooting around Liverpool in front of John's house and in front of Paul's house. Well, the day that we're here at Paul's house, the film crew, the props department, are actually bringing furniture out of the house. And it was interesting, furniture they'd use obviously for the movie, but it was interesting how they had wrapped cushions and towels and everything around the jamb of the door so that nothing would get damaged as they were coming out of the house. They weren't as concerned about the props as they were about Paul's National Trust childhood home. Del told another amusing story. When you look at the front of Paul's house, just to the right, you can see a drain pipe coming down from the roof. And Del says that when Paul would be out and coming home late from a gig, and everybody in the house would be asleep, rather than go in through the front door, Paul would shimmy up that drain pipe and crawl in the bedroom window so as not to wake up his dad and probably his brother Mike as well. Now, the National Trust does own both John's house and Paul's house, and they host tours where you can go inside the houses. That would be way cool, but the tours are limited, I think, to like 12 or 16 people because they're pretty small houses. But I really looked into doing that. You can go to the website and go to the National Trust and see it. I looked into it, but the times that we were going to be in Liverpool, they weren't actually offering the tours. So we got to take the bus instead, and we got to go by the houses. We just couldn't go in them. So I hope this gives you a little feeling of what it was like to take the Magical Mystery Tour bus tour. And if you're ever in Liverpool, I strongly recommend that you do it. What a great trip. And now as the trip is ending, the bus is going to take us down towards Matthew Street. And of course, Matthew Street is where the world-famous Cavern Club is. And so in the next episode, we'll be going down those dimly lit stairs into that cavern where all the cavern dwellers would come to see the Beatles play. Okay, the bus has stopped. We're on Matthew Street. What a Magical Mystery Tour. It was wonderful, and particularly because of this gentleman standing next to me. He was our tour guide, the jolly Del.
Hello.
Del, tell me, how long have you been doing this?
Nearly 2 years.
And what's your favorite part of the tour?
I think my favourite part of the process. But yeah, we get to see, get right up close, and your imagination can run away. So I like Paul's house, and I love George's house too because he's my favourite.
and then you were saying that you saw film sites going on this week.
Yeah,
tell us a little about that.
Yeah, they're making Sam Mendes did a couple of the Bond movies He's making 4 movies this year, one for each Beatle. So this week we've seen people filming outside John's house, outside Paul's house, and it's going to be really cool. Films are out in April 2028. So there you go.
Great.
It's very exciting.
And folks, I'll tell you, if you come to Liverpool, you have to do the Magical Mystery Tour and ask for Del and Neil. Now Neil, I'll get a shot of him here in a minute, but Neil was great because that's a big bus, and Liverpool has pretty narrow streets. And guess what? I'm going to be driving on the wrong side of the road tomorrow, so there'll be more to tell about that. Anything you'd like to say to the world, Neil?
I would just say, Del, I would just say, if you're in Liverpool, join us. We always have loads of fun. We really, really do. Get to learn about the Beatles, even if you're not a huge Beatles fan. Come along, and you never know, you might end up being a Beatles fan when you get off. But it's been wonderful, and thank you for coming today. Thanks for coming all this way.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Cheers. Sir. Thank you so much. Cheers. Okay, real pleasure.
Yeah. I said in the last episode you could go out singing Strawberry Fields Forever, but now you need to sing Penny Lane. And until next time, keep it rocking.
If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.